November 10, 1944. I want you to picture a cold, gray airfield somewhere deep inside the Japanese home islands. The war has turned against Japan. The skies are no longer safe. Fuel is scarce. Experienced pilots are dead or dying. And inside a guarded hangar, partially hidden beneath canvas sheets and secrecy, rests a weapon so strange, so ambitious, that even many Japanese officers barely understand it. It looks like a small aircraft. It has wings. It has a nose. But it is not meant to land, and it is not meant to come back. What I am looking at, through documents, test reports, and post-war intelligence files, is the Mitsubishi IG Model 1KO. The Imperial Japanese Army called it No.1 Model 1A. The Allies would later catalog it under a cold designation Ki-147. This was not a kamikaze plane. This was something far more unsettling. It was meant to be guided, by radio, while flying toward American warships. And in 1944, that idea alone was enough to make U.S. naval planners uneasy. At this stage of the war, Japan was desperately searching for a way to strike back at American naval dominance. Carrier groups roamed the Pacific almost unchallenged. Battleships shelled islands with impunity. Submarines strangled supply lines. Traditional bombing raids had become nearly suicidal. Fighters were shot down before they reached their targets. Bombers burned in the sky. The Imperial Japanese Army faced a brutal question: how do you hit a fleet you cannot approach? The answer was not found in larger bombs, nor faster aircraft, but in control. Instead of trusting a pilot to survive the run, Japan began experimenting with something radically different: a missile that could be guided after launch, aimed precisely at ships, adjusted in flight, and detonated with catastrophic force. This is where the Ki-147 enters the story. The project began quietly, hidden behind code names and deliberately vague documentation. Officially, it was part of the IG weapons family, air-to-surface guided missiles. Unofficially, it was an admission that conventional air power had failed. IG Model 1KO was the largest and most ambitious of these designs, where its sister weapon, the Kawasaki Ki-148, was smaller and lighter. The Ki-147 was built to carry overwhelming destruction. An 800-kilogram warhead. That figure alone should make you pause. 800 kilograms of explosive, essentially a full naval bomb, packed into a guided airframe. This was not meant to damage ships. It was meant to break them. Physically, the missile was imposing. At nearly 5.8 meters long, with a wingspan of 3.6 meters, it resembled a compact aircraft more than a bomb. Its structure was simple but purposeful. Short wings for stability. A streamlined fuselage. Control surfaces designed not for dogfighting or maneuverability, but for one thing only: steady, controllable flight toward a moving target. Under the skin, the engineering tells an even more dramatic story. Power came from a Toku Ro Mark I Model 3 rocket engine, producing around 240 kilograms of thrust. By modern standards, that is modest. But in 1944 Japan, it was extraordinary. This engine allowed the Ki-147 to reach speeds of around 550 kilometers per hour after release. Not supersonic, not unstoppable, but fast enough. Fast enough to complicate interception. Fast enough to outrun reaction time. Fast enough to strike before defenses could fully respond. The missile's range was roughly 11 kilometers. That may sound short, but in operational terms, it was carefully calculated. The Ki-147 was never meant to be launched from afar. It was designed to be released relatively close to the target, once the bomber had already broken through outer defenses. And that bomber was the Mitsubishi Ki-67. The Ki-67 was a heavy bomber, fast by Japanese standards, robust, and capable of carrying the Ki-147 beneath its fuselage. In theory, the Ki-67 would approach the fleet at altitude, release the missile, and then, this is the critical part, act as the control platform. The missile was radio-guided. From the bomber, an operator would track the Ki-147 visually and guide it toward the target using radio signals. Small corrections. Adjustments in pitch and roll. Steering the missile like a remote aircraft directly into the heart of a ship. This is where the fear factor truly emerges. Because unlike kamikaze attacks, which relied on sheer numbers and human sacrifice, the Ki-147 represented something colder, something calculated. A weapon that could be aimed with precision, corrected mid-flight, and deliberately steered into the most vulnerable point of a vessel. American intelligence officers who later examined captured documents were deeply unsettled. This was not fanaticism. This was engineering. The first prototype was completed in October 1944. By November, 10 missiles had been built. Test drops followed soon after. And here, reality intruded. The reports are brutally honest. The gyro stabilizer, essential for keeping the missile steady, malfunctioned repeatedly. Without stable orientation, radio guidance became erratic. Operators struggled to keep the missile on course. The radio equipment itself proved difficult to tune, especially under combat-like conditions. Signal interference, delays, and control lag all plagued the system. In controlled tests, the Ki-147 could fly. It could respond, but it could not be trusted. And in warfare, unreliability is fatal. This is one of the great tragedies of late-war Japanese weapons development. The ideas were advanced. The concepts were sound. But time, resources, and industrial capacity were gone. The Ki-147 was born too late, in a nation already collapsing under bombing and blockade. Yet even in failure, the weapon left a mark. American technical teams, after the war, studied the Ki-147 closely. They noted its similarities to German guided weapons like the Fritz X and AS-293, but also its unique features. The Japanese approach favored simplicity and brute force over elegance. A massive warhead, straightforward control surfaces, minimal onboard systems. It was crude, but dangerous. I want to take a moment to talk about the human side of this weapon, because it is often overlooked. Unlike kamikaze aircraft, the Ki-147 did not require a pilot to die. The operator sat safely inside the bomber, guiding the missile from afar. This represented a shift in mindset. Japan was not only sacrificing lives, it was experimenting with removing the human body from the point of impact. And that terrified Allied planners, because if perfected, this kind of weapon could be mass-produced. It could be flown by less experienced crews. It could be launched repeatedly without losing trained pilots. In a war of attrition, that mattered. Imagine a formation of Ki-67 bombers approaching at dusk, each carrying one Ki-147. Fighters scramble, anti-aircraft fire erupts, and then, one by one, missiles drop, ignite, and begin their guided descent toward ships that can only react, not predict. Even one successful hit could cripple a carrier, damage elevators, ignite aviation fuel, render a task force ineffective. That was the nightmare scenario. In comparison, American weapons at the time relied on bombs and torpedoes dropped by pilots who had seconds to aim under fire. German guided weapons had already demonstrated the potential of radio-controlled munitions in Europe. Japan was attempting to catch up fast. The Ki-147 never reached operational use. No confirmed combat launches exist. It remained trapped in the testing phase, undone by technical faults and the relentless advance of Allied forces. But its existence alone matters. It shows that Japan was not merely reacting with desperation. It was innovating under pressure. It understood that the future of warfare was guided, remote, precise. In that sense, the Ki-147 was not a failure, it was a preview. When I look at modern anti-ship missiles today, radar, guided, satellite-linked, capable of striking targets hundreds of kilometers away, I see the ghost of the Ki-147, an early, imperfect ancestor, born in a burning empire, reaching toward a future it would never see. The final verdict is this: the Mitsubishi Ki-147 was a weapon ahead of its time, trapped in the wrong moment of history. It did not sink ships. It did not change the outcome of the war. But it changed the way war was imagined. It proved that even as Japan lost control of the seas, it sought control of the battlefield itself, through signals, guidance, and remote destruction. And had the war lasted longer, had the technology matured, had the gyros stabilized and the radios held steady, the Pacific might have faced a far darker sky. That is why this tiny Japanese missile still matters. Not for what it did, but for what it almost became.